Hello everyone, welcome in. In this video, we are going to be comparing two trials that recently ended to the Alexee Trevizo case. I found these cases to be similar in a lot of ways and could be used as a very interesting trial comparison as to what may or may not happen in Alexee Trevizo's trial. Both of these people are charged with murder, just like Alexee, so essentially, that's, one of the biggest similarities. I'm going to go through a rundown of each case, the Hannah Payne case and then the Charlie case, and then we'll jump into how the little bits of evidence in those cases are similar and different. But just because I don't expect everyone to have watched both of these cases and know all the information. So Hannah Payne, she's a young woman, similar to Alexee, convicted of malice murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and because she had a gun when she was doing all three of those felonies, she was charged with that 3 times as well. I believe her sentencing, I don't remember exactly how they merged all the counts, but they merged a bunch of it, and she did end up with life with parole, and I believe an 8-year sentence for, I think, the false imprisonment, and then the 3-year sentence for the aggravated assault, which are consecutive. So at least she would be having to do, in my opinion, like 20 to 25 years, and then she'll probably be out because she does have to do, 13 years for sure, and then whatever the minimum for parole is on a life sentence in Florida. So essentially what happened with her is she was going through a light with a truck and another truck. She was almost struck by a vehicle, but was not struck by a vehicle, but that vehicle did hit a tractor-trailer truck, and it caused a pretty big accident. Everyone pulls over to the side. They're waiting for, officials to arrive, ambulance and police and all that. And there is, at some point, the man in the truck who caused the accident goes to leave the scene, and there's some type of commotion. 911 calls are happening, all, from a bunch of different people. And that's some of the evidence that they piece together. At some point, Hannah Payne gets back in her vehicle and goes after the man who's leaving to get his identifying information from his vehicle. And she ends up cutting him off basically and blocking him in, which is where the false imprisonment comes in. And her defense was that when she went up to his car, a struggle ensued. He was essentially beating her from inside the car, I guess, grabbing her into the car, and she pulled her weapon. A struggle ensued over the weapon, and her defense was that he pulled the trigger. Obviously, it did not work. She was convicted. Not a great defense if it does not work, obviously. And that's glossing over some of it. They had a lot of things they tried to argue. I do think her attorney did the best he could. He was pretty good with trying to find doubt in these, or impeach the witnesses, so to speak, or find a reasonable doubt in certain areas, but it just obviously didn't work, and the evidence was overwhelming. So on to Charlie here. I just basically shortened it down because I don't remember every single thing. I think he had multiple charges, but I don't even remember. Basically, he did murder for hire, right? He hired his girlfriend's gang-related baby daddy to take another gang member and go and kill his sister's ex-husband so that the sister could move away from Tallahassee and go down to Miami, Florida, and live with the family, and basically everything would be good again. There was a very contentious divorce, very, very nasty divorce between Wendy Adelson and Dan Markell, the man who was killed in that case. And he had been filing crazy things. She'd been filing crazy things. It was not an amicable divorce. And basically Charlie Adelson had made, in the presence of other people, jokes about, I got Wendy a TV because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman. And Wendy had a phone call the day of the murder about the TV being fixed, and they had a repairman come to fix the TV, but the TV never even got fixed. Very weird. There's a lot of odd and interesting evidence, but essentially the bulk of it is they hired these two guys to go and kill Dan Markell. They did. They're convicted. The baby mama, who was the the pin in the middle of all of this. She's been convicted. Now Charlie's convicted, and his mother, Donna Adelson, has been arrested. I am going to do a video discussing, there's a lot to go through, but I've written down a few timestamps of very interesting things that they discuss about their defense, the things they did in their defense for Charlie, and things they think about the jury and why they think he's maintaining his innocence, essentially. I find it to be very interesting to hear after the fact, because again, it's my opinion, but I do really think it's going to be a slam dunk case against Alexee as far as the evidence goes. And so I just wonder if, from the Trevizo side of things, are they in as much denial as the Adelsons are? And so I do think it will be very interesting to go through those phone calls and hear the mind of someone who is just does not think they deserve to be punished when the evidence was overwhelming. So that I will be doing too, but there are hours and hours of phone calls. We can get into the differences and similarities now. So this is, we'll jump back to Hannah Payne. The differences in their trial that were obviously pretty astounding is that Hannah Payne had an affirmative defense of self-defense. You couldn't really use another defense when you pull a gun out and shoot someone. But yeah, Florida is pretty pro self-defense, and so obviously when you pull a gun, there's not a lot of other defenses you can use other than self-defense. And so she had an affirmative defense. I don't think Alexee is. Alexee is going to be saying, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Hannah Payne, the difference with an affirmative defense is, I did it, but here's why, right? For my non-legal people. Hannah Payne also testified in her own trial, which is, we haven't seen it yet from Alexee, but I would bet anything that she's not going to testify. She just doesn't seem to have the personality, in my opinion. Maybe she will. Maybe something will happen over this next year and they will do some serious preparation to get her ready to take the stand. But because she took a polygraph, I believe that's as close as a testifying as she is going to get. And it's still to be determined if that will even be used in court. So I don't think we'll hear from her on the stand. That's why I'm pretty confident to say it's a difference in the trial, because I really don't. If you disagree, please tell me, because if you think that Alexee will take the stand, I'm so curious to know why you think that, because maybe I'm missing something. There is a moment where if I was, part of her defense team, I'd be like, I don't think she should take the stand, because when pushed, she had a little bit of an attitude, in my opinion. If you refer back to the body cam footage, and if I'm able to, I'll squeeze it in right here.
You need to make sure that you're safe. I need to send you to Loveless to labor delivery. Will you please agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm gonna work on that.
But basically, as you see, she says, okay, fine, whatever, when they're like asking her to sign this paperwork, and she'd just been confronted. She sees that the cops are there. We can all assess that she's upset. She has been foiled, or, just to, still give her benefit of the doubt of her innocence. She hasn't been foiled, but maybe she's just upset because she really had a horrible instance happen in the bathroom and is now being pushed and pressured by these doctors and police, however you want to see it, okay, to give benefit of the doubt to Alexee. But when she goes, okay, fine, whatever, about signing it and being transferred, you'd think like, hey, you're in trouble. Things aren't going good right now. You might not want to have an attitude. I would not want her on the stand if she was our client, because I'd be like, she is not going to do well. Number one, she's emotional. She's like kind of, meek. She doesn't even question or read any of her legal documents. When she was at the police station, when you see that body cam footage, she just, gives up her DNA and tells him, give it to my mom. It's quite concerning, actually. And so I do not think she should take the stand, and that's why I'm pretty confident that she won't. Use of a deadly weapon. Technically, Alexee did not bring a deadly weapon. She did not have a deadly weapon. It would be much different if she had brought her own bag or her own thing to use to hurt the baby in any way, shape, or form. But that's not what happened. She used what was available, allegedly. So essentially, she didn't come prepared to fight. Now, also, I don't think Hannah Payne thought that day I'm putting my gun on my hip because I'm going to kill someone, but she did pull a deadly weapon out in the midst of whatever was going on. And that always, I'm not your attorney, I'm not giving legal advice, but that pretty much always can, lead to some issues. There are self-defense experts here on YouTube that you can, go and listen to their stuff. But even they say, from what I've heard, just, don't fight when you don't have to, and definitely don't pull a weapon when you don't have to. Try your best to retreat. That's basically you can always be the best instance. I do think Florida might be the most lenient state on that, and they don't tell you have to retreat at all. But again, a lot of experts say just having and using a weapon in a crazy moment can put you in some hot water. So moving on from there, differences with Charlie Adelson and Alexee. Again, Charlie testified in his trial. He claims on his phone calls with his mom and the mom says that everyone says you did so good and you were great on the stand. I mean, he was unwavering, I would say. I don't think it was great. I do think he was not shaken. I don't think he showed emotion one way or another. I feel like he did do good on the stand. I think the story was bad, right? And so it doesn't matter how good you do on the stand when you're basically selling people up the river without a paddle. So again, and I do not think Alexee will testify. This evidence and everything that happened for Charlie, it took a very long time for the state to gather, and it was very tedious to walk through all of the evidence in that trial, which I find it will be very different from the Alexee case because the cops were nearby. They had already been there. They came right back. Their body cam footage is right after everything happened. We have the hallway video. Everything happened right away. Obviously, 3 months later, after the autopsy comes back, is when we finally get interviews with the housekeeper, and all the medical staff. So we lost a little bit of information possibly within that time, but it's still a lot more cohesive and easier to understand how this happened than in the Charlie case because they needed wiretaps and phone recordings. There was FBI recordings from being inside a restaurant listening to them, and it was just horrible audio. And so there was a lot of evidentiary issues with Charlie and how long it took to put this together. And then obviously in court, that puts a burden on the state to walk everyone through how and why the state did what they did to get this information over the course of this time to make them feel safe that the state isn't trying to screw over someone, meaning the defendant. And so it just puts a big burden on the state. And so that was a big difference because I do believe the state's evidence is so strong in the Alexee case, unless the judge decides to just crush every and all hope of evidence in this case, which there's no case law supporting that. So I do think a lot of evidence is coming in, and it was gathered quick and efficient, and despite any issues with things that the defense might try and bring up. Well, we don't know exactly how the baby was placed because they took him out and opened the bag. Yeah, we got enough witness statements, and I think everyone can put the puzzle together in their head. And so yes, with that we can continue. Now, similarities. And remember, Hannah Payne convicted very quickly. On my last thing, I will show you just how quick Charlie Adelson convicted very quickly. So these similarities are very important in my opinion. Now, one of the most important statements in closing arguments made by one of the state's prosecutors in the Hannah Payne case was that she has the audacity, meaning Hannah Payne, to blame everyone else for her actions. And that was when I was like, oh snap, I find that to be probably something verbatim that's going to be said in the Alexee Trevizo case, because if you're just kind of assessing what people say about this case, and you can see it online because there's comments galore on any video or post about Alexee, you can get the sense that people feel really offended by the blaming everyone else for the act. So I do think that the jury in the Hannah Payne case maybe solidified something that I've been harping on in some of my videos, if you go back, which is you run the risk of offending the jury when you are sending out such an unbelievable and blaming everyone else type of defense, right? When the evidence is so overwhelming that, like, there was one person in the bathroom, there's a bloody trail leading back, and you never told nobody, meaning Alexee, and then you're going to try and spin that seriously runs the risk of offending a jury. Seriously does. And I think that type of defense coming from Alexee is going to be so similar to Hannah Payne saying he pulled the trigger on my gun. Like, that's wild. To give some benefit of the doubt to her, she stated that right away on the phone call that they struggled over the gun and he pulled the trigger. I do believe that there is so she could have been attempting to alibi herself immediately. What I find very similar and interesting to compare to that is that immediately when confronted with the baby being in the trash, there was an alibi from Alexee as well, so allegedly, in my opinion, when she said nothing was crying. So to me, that's super similar to after shooting someone, picking the phone back up and telling the 911 operator who just heard everything, oh no, he pulled the trigger on my gun from inside his car. And Alexee saying, yeah, you found a dead baby in the trash, but he wasn't breathing. Now, that's just my opinion, but I do find that a very similar, path for this to be going down in court. Okay, so the next thing is lots of video and audio evidence. In the Hannah Payne case, basically there was 3 911 calls, her 911 call, a 911 call from a gentleman who stopped at the very first accident and was, there on that first scene, and then a 911 call from a witness who saw Hannah Payne basically block in and trap and then, pull her gun, and they were all on the phone. And so that's ample amount of evidence that they were able to piece together. And one man actually drove by when the shooting happened and had a cell phone video as well, because people are recording all the time, and when you see some crazy stuff happening, people pull out their phone. So there was a lot of video and audio evidence very similar to Alexee's case. I know we're waiting on the judge to decide, which just a quick note about that, stuff slows down, for the courts around Christmas time. People aren't rushed, and if my calculations are correct, the original prosecutor on this case was out on a medical leave, and I believe that should be over now unless they took an extended leave or anything like that. So after this holiday season, I do believe things will pick up. We will see a few things start moving as far as the judge's decision, because you want to usually give everyone at least probably 7 or 8 months at minimum, with a solid ability to start crafting everything for their murder case, right? So if we are scheduled to go to court in August, I believe, late January, early February, there should be a decision made. So with that being said, also, Gary does have another murder trial coming up that was scheduled for Alexee's original trial dates. And so I do think January will be the time that we start getting some information, because he probably wants that before he goes to his murder trial, so his team can start working on everything while he is in trial and have everything ready to go when he gets back. That's just my opinion. But yeah, that's just a little bit of the off note that the original attorney's coming back. So when it comes to the evidence, I think there's been quite a pause. But again, the way the court sees it is this is a long ways out. You're not requesting a speedy trial within like 3 months or whatever. Alexee wasn't trying to get this done, so there's really no rush. some of this kind of information may change if a lot of this evidence is excluded. I've tried to cover our bases as much as possible. You can never fully predict what a judge is going to say or do, but we can try our best. And I do think that basically she's going to open the door to almost everything because of how a lot of the witness statements say that they felt they were deceived the whole time, statements that happened what you would think under medical privilege were also possibly in furtherance of a crime. So it does bring up a very interesting legal point. But when it comes to the possibility of murder, a lot of things like the medical privilege may be thrown to the side, because if she was evasive and making statements prior to the crime happening, those were really the statements that we've been worried about. The judge can still say those are totally allowed to be in, because when she's deceptive, when you have the triage nurse, which I'm making a video about his witness interview right now, you have him saying, you know, she wouldn't really let you get a good look at her. She was moving around a lot and stuff like that. Well, that is relevant despite it being medical, right? And so if the judge sees that there is enough evidence surrounding in this case that the judge believes the state's claims of Alexee knew she was pregnant and came there and did a premeditated act, basically, you know, the judge might say then, well, yeah, this whole thing's in. So I'm not placing my bets yet, but I do think more than enough of the lots of video and audio evidence that we have for Alexee will be allowed in as well. On top of the autopsy and all the medical information, like in Hannah Payne's case, they didn't need to prove how he died. It was obvious that it was because she shot him. They'll bring it up, state it. There's not a lot of argument. It's done. The whole argument in Alexee's case is about that. So the audio and you know, body cam footage and hallway footage, all of that is just to help prove the state's claims about Alexee's intentions that night. And then the actual medical testimony and medical facts are going to be what proves that the baby was alive and was placed in the trash, so that there's no defense. So just a little tangent there. This next point is probably one of the most important, because this is my opinion, but the defense in Alexee's case is going to be asking everyone to not believe reality, not believe their eyes when they see her run to the bathroom, come out chillingly cold, in my opinion, not mentioning anything about the baby, being told that there was a pull cord that she could have helped, the bag being tied closed. There's a lot of surrounding intent in her actions, in my opinion. And so basically trying to deny any of the facts is asking the jury to not believe reality. And that is dangerous. Like we've said earlier, you run the risk of offending the jury when you are basically lying to them. I get that it's your defense and you're trying to craft it, but it comes off as a lie, and lies offend people, especially when they can see the truth. They try to poke holes in witness statements, which is basic. Every case you try and do that, not even just criminal, civil, whatever. But Hannah Payne's attorney was really good trying to impeach certain statements by witnesses. He was not able to fully impeach any of the witnesses, obviously, because I believe the jury believed everything they said, despite minor inconsistencies, which is why I think it's a similarity for Alexee's case, because even in some of the witness statements 3 months later in April, when they're being interviewed, maybe they misnamed the wrong Lori, or they don't remember who grabbed the baby out of the bag first, or anything like that. Your mind, you know, that's why they say, like, it's a huge thing to try and impeach witnesses. Witness statements are not reliable. We have, luckily for Alexee's case on our side, in the state side, technically, there is video footage to back up what happened. So you can clearly tell that these witnesses aren't going to be intending to lie, that they just didn't remember. It was an intense, insane moment, and people conflate things differently in their head. If you can prove that they're not intentionally trying to lie to get Alexee in trouble, just are mistaken about some of the facts, they're not impeached, right? Then no one's going to distrust these medical staff. So with that being said, I do think they're going to attempt to poke holes in witness statements. They might try to bring up, criminal histories of people. I've seen some of that thrown around. I just don't think any of that's going to stick. I don't think any of it's relevant. And if they actually did try to bring up, past criminal histories for anyone, you also run the risk of looking like you're attacking the witnesses. And this is all very intricate jury strategy, but the jury is the end all be all, no one else in your case. And when it's a murder case for, life in prison, you really want to make sure that the jury is catered to. And when it comes to how I believe they might try to impeach the witnesses in Alexee's case, because they have no other way to impeach them other than to throw dirt and mud on them, that is very dangerous, because you just don't know how the jury is going to react to you basically crap talking people who found a dead baby in a bag, right? So you have to really think about the logistics of this trial. But sometimes the people closest to the trial, as we'll hear when I make the video about Charlie Adelson's phone calls, are in my opinion, such denial about the circumstances that even after convicted, they still blame the jury. They say that they were stupid, that if they had an educated jury, things would have been better. All kinds of things. And it's really crazy to me, but, it is dangerous to go to trial with the defenses that Hannah Payne, Charlie Adelson, and in my opinion, what Alexee's defense will be. They're dangerous defenses and dangerous strategies. So we can move on to the last one here. They both had the opportunity to not do what they did. Hannah Payne and Alexee Trevizo. On the 911 phone calls, the operators tell Hannah Payne, like, do not chase him. It's not safe. I think 3 times or something like that. The defense tried to say that she didn't hear that part of the phone call, even though you have her responding to one of the times that the 911 operator says it. She's like, ma'am, don't chase him. It's not safe. She's like, I'm not chasing him. I'm following him. And so it's really hard to lie to the jury's face and try and craft your defense when the facts are the facts, right? Because the jury's going to find an inconsistency somewhere, and sometimes it's going to be extremely glaring. So that's also one of the nails in the coffin for Hannah Payne's case. But Hannah Payne was told not to go, not to do this. She didn't have to get out of her car to get like a license plate or the type of car that this guy was driving or anything like that. She got out of her car and pulled a gun, and things went bad, and that's her fault. Alexee, on the other hand, had the opportunity, should she have wanted to inform people that a baby had just come out of her by pulling that help cord, and could have informed anyone and everyone in that whole hospital that there was a baby and that a medical emergency just happened in the bathroom in the privacy locked behind the door. Now, that's just my opinion, but I do think that when you have the opportunity to not do what you did, such a glaring opportunity, like Hannah Payne, not having to get out of her car, not even having to chase this guy. And when it comes to Alexee, in my opinion, being able to do anything to have not put the baby in the trash, seems like the last possible action that you need to do, unless, in my opinion, you are trying to kill the baby. But again, a jury will get to decide on that. So we will move on to Charlie here. Similarities, again, blamed everyone else. He's like, it's a conspiracy. The state hates me. I'm a rich white guy from Miami up here in, like the backwoods of Tallahassee. Essentially makes everyone seem like they're like all country and backwards there. I have no clue about, the inner politics of Florida, but supposedly, according to Charlie Adelson, people from Tallahassee don't like outsiders. I don't know, but that seems silly to me. No, you killed someone, right? You had someone killed. He blamed everyone else for his actions, that it was a conspiracy against him, that he was being extorted, and that the Latin Kings went and killed his sister's ex-husband because they knew that Charlie was rich. Again, very silly story. I don't have to even say allegedly on that, because he was convicted and he went to trial with that. Again, he asked the jury to not believe the evidence. like I just said, he tried to convince everyone that he was being extorted and that these Latin King gang members took it upon themselves to go kill a law professor who had nothing to do with them at all, in hopes that they could set Charlie Adelson up and extort him. And that seems to not add up to any type of gang behavior at all. You know, you'd think that if the Latin King gang members were the ones who were thinking of getting money out of Charlie, wouldn't they just go rob him in his house? I don't know why you'd have to go do a murder for hire plot to extort someone for a very, I don't know. I don't even know. It's so unbelievable. So again, asking the jury to not believe the evidence, to not believe reality that's in front of them, an unbelievable defense. Now, I use this picture of Alexee specifically for this video because, again, how unbelievable is it going to be when they can clearly see a lot of signs and facts that can, beyond a reasonable doubt, in my opinion, prove Alexee should have or did know she was pregnant, such as the phentermine and the photos of her cheerleading and everything like that. It will be very hard for the jury to believe the defense of she didn't know she was pregnant despite all these other instances, and then once the baby came out, she didn't inform anyone. I mean, if you didn't know you were pregnant and you didn't have motive for hiding the baby or the pregnancy, you'd think once it comes out, you would be open about it, right? You would be like, oh my gosh, a baby just came out of me. Here's a baby. And I'm not just assuming that. You can look up a lot of people who had hidden pregnancies who really did not know they were pregnant. Like, I'm talking the babies go up in their rib cage and like they don't even grow a belly or nothing. They don't injure the baby once the baby comes out. They don't conceal the baby once the baby comes out. More often than not, the baby comes out alive and this person has a baby now, okay? So, like, you can look up multiple instances of that online. So, it's going to be very unbelievable defense, in my opinion, for Alexee to say that, well, her defense, because she's not going to be on the stand most likely. Yes, here's pictures of her looking pregnant. Yes, she was taking phentermine to get to lose weight. Yes, she told the hospital staff, you know, she's had periods every month and that she's a virgin, and yada, yada, yada. But once the baby came out, she had no motive to kill it. No, the baby was already dead, so she just threw it away. That's all. I mean, duh. It makes so much sense, right, guys? You're dumb if you don't believe it. You're uneducated. Whatever, right? Like from Charlie, what he believes on everyone. So essentially, that's why I believe it's a pretty unbelievable defense for Alexee, in my opinion, because all the surrounding evidence shows that there was intent in those actions of putting the baby in the trash bag and not telling everyone. Otherwise, you're just asking everyone to believe you were walking through life, had no clue you were pregnant, and when a baby came out, you just then decided, oh, well, I'm not telling no one about this now, but you want us to believe you didn't want to tell anyone about it the whole rest of the 9 months when you likely knew, in my opinion. So, again, very unbelievable defense. Closing statements from the state in Alexee's case will probably be very similar to something kind of like that, but much more eloquent and hitting on their actual points of strategy. But you're asking us to believe this. Are you for real right now? That's basically kind of how I'd go with it. Anyways, final one here. Interesting part that wasn't really in the Hannah Payne case at all because her family had nothing to do with it. Family statements and family testimony is a big part of the guilty verdict in Charlie Adelson's case. He basically, you know, allegedly, because he's the only one convicted right now, but allegedly the whole family was in on it. Maybe not the dad. The dad seemed to be left in the dark, honestly, to me. That's just my opinion. But in my opinion, I do think Donna and Wendy knew what was going on. That's just whatever. But Donna's been arrested, not convicted. Wendy has not been arrested yet. So I have to be careful being like, they're all in on it. You know, one day we're probably going to be able to say that. But until then, allegedly, the whole family was in on it. And then when they had wiretaps, a lot of the family statements and Donna and Charlie talking is what has gotten them in trouble. And Wendy's testimony in Charlie's case was just horrible for him. It was really bad. She literally drives by the house, Dan Markel's house, their old house, an hour after he shot, and is the police are already there blocking off the street, and she's caught driving there. And her excuse for doing that was she needed to go buy liquor for this housewarming party for her friends, and she was driving to go buy bullet bourbon. Unironically, I mean, you can't make that up. And she drove past a bunch of other liquor stores and went to that one and didn't even need to take Trescott Road, the road that they were on, that the house was on, to get there. And her statements are very inconsistent because she also says that she was busy that day, and the guy who came to fix the TV took forever, and she had emails and all this and that she didn't even get to take a shower. Yet she doesn't shower before her lunch with her friends, but drives like 20 minutes out of her way to go to this one liquor store. When, if you just did a quick Google search, they said in the case, there is a liquor store right next to where they were having lunch. There's 7 or so liquor stores on the way. It was very bad for Charlie, the evidence coming from Wendy and her actions, in my opinion. And there's actually talk on the phone calls between Charlie and his mom about that, and they are pretty mad at Wendy. I think they might start throwing him under the bus, or throwing her under the bus. Very interesting. But the family involvement is a very big deal because I have a video here, and I tried my best to get the statements as clear as possible. If I didn't know what was said, I tried to leave it out. But on the police body cam footage, when the officer's calling in Alexee and her mom's IDs, Rosa is like interrogating Alexee, right? She is asking her questions, and there's no medical issue happening right there. That is body cam footage. That should be allowed in. Alexee basically says everything in that little clip right there, and I titled it Rosa's interrogation of Alexee because she really, for Alexee having invoked her Fifth Amendment and not being, she's not speaking at all. She basically was interrogated by Rosa in that moment, in my opinion. And it should that make it in, which I really think there's no issue. There's no medical talk, nothing weird's happening in that moment. I do think that that will be a very in a pivotal piece of evidence, and that's all Rosa, right? And Rosa pulled that out of her in front of a police officer wearing body cam footage. And, Alexee basically fully admits to the tampering with evidence charge and that the baby came out and all kinds of stuff. So that's, in my opinion, family statements are going to be huge in the Alexee Trevizo case as well. And when I say family, I also mean her boyfriend and boyfriend's mother, because, even though it's my opinion that Alexee was able to deceive everyone and tell them that she was not pregnant and possibly made them feel uncomfortable if and when ever asked, so they never asked again. That's my opinion. That's what I think happened. That will be evidence itself. Her deception about her weight gain would be evidence itself, because anyone who is gaining weight, who's had sexual intercourse at any time, should know. Well, any woman who is gaining weight, who's had sexual intercourse, should know you could be pregnant. So, especially when, like in Alexee's case, she works out all the time with her cheerleading and everything like that. She's younger, so her metabolism should be pretty okay, unless there's some kind of underlying health issue. There's no reason for her to gain a bunch of belly weight how she was. And so any issues that, like, you don't have to have everyone knowing that Alexee knew she was pregnant or anything like that. It's actually almost better for the case when peeling back the layers and talking to Devin's mom and Rosa about Alexee over the 9 months before this instance happened, to get the jury to realize, like, oh dang, this girl allegedly may have deceived everyone about this, and that was also part of the intentional act, right? So very important to me, these family statements, and Charlie's family is all involved, and Alexee's obviously the only one involved in hers, but because Rosa was so involved in the initial police encounter, a lot of family statements will be used as well, and I find that to be interesting. So this is where it gets very, very interesting for us. I do think we have so many similarities in these defenses. Let's look at these numbers here. Charlie Adelson, convicted in less than 4 hours. Hannah Payne, convicted in exactly 1 hour and 29 minutes. We don't know how long it would take if Alexee is found guilty by the jury, but maybe we can make some kind of poll or something during the trial to see how long everyone thinks, because we'll see how the trial's going as it's moving along, and we'll know what's going on. I do think it's going to be glaringly obvious which side will be winning throughout the trial, and so it'll only be a matter of how long will it take the jury to come back. And I mean, could you think there could be even possibly one holdout juror when it comes to all the evidence? Who knows? But I do find it extremely interesting that, man, these jury deliberations are taking no time at all. 4 hours to send me to prison for life. I'd be pretty sad. I'd be like, dang, they really thought I was guilty. Charlie maintains his innocence. Hannah Payne convicted in an hour 29 minutes. So far, we don't have any kind of statements from her or her team or anything like that about this. So, I can't say that she's, maintaining her innocence like Charlie, but he is, even though it took them no time at all to find him guilty, and even less time for Hannah. And so if you can see how those defenses were unbelievable, how they gloss over facts, how they ask you to not believe in reality, and how the overwhelming amount of evidence leading to someone's guilt really does solidify in the jury's mind, we're left with, well, how does Gary Mitchell operate as a defense attorney? And from everything I've seen, um, it's my opinion that he's not very effective. He doesn't get people off of their charges all the time. He just defends a lot of people. So when it comes to that, I don't think that he is a heavy hitter. He is someone who cares about people having a defense. Okay, he is the head of the ACLU of New Mexico. He cares very much about constitutional rights and people having a proper defense. So a proper defense does not mean that you are able to that you are just someone who should go down in the history books as an attorney who can get people off with murder. That's just not how it is. He takes the hard cases, the cases that have pretty crappy evidence, a lot of child abuse and murder and all that kind of stuff, and he gets he has a lot of convictions, a lot of losses under his belt because he takes those cases. It's nothing against Gary Mitchell himself as an attorney. Attorneys are not superheroes. They can't, spin the facts in the way they want. You can try your best to exclude evidence, to stack the jury, to do whatever you can, but when the facts are overwhelming, the facts are overwhelming. And in my opinion, that's how it is with the Alexee case. These are overwhelming facts. They will not be able to meet the burden of causing reasonable doubt from the state's case. And I think it's just really interesting to see the denial aspect after crimes are committed, especially when the evidence is overwhelming. I do not know psychologically what makes people do that. Is it the fear of being in trouble? Is it the hope of getting away with it? Or do they really believe they did nothing wrong? I don't know, but I will be so curious to see the final crafted defense for Alexee. If our calculations are correct, it's going to be somewhere right along the line, in my opinion, of Charlie Adelson and Hannah Payne's defenses, which are, I just see it as, it's like you are the defense for these cases, in my opinion, are like a youth football team, and their opponent, the state, and the evidence is an NFL team, and they are going to just run them right off the field. It obviously happened in Charlie Adelson. It obviously happened in Hannah Payne, and we're getting close to the turn of the new year here. We're going to get a decision on evidence. We're going to start seeing depositions happen. We are going to start seeing interrogatories. We're going to start seeing everything start moving in this, because it's high time that people start getting a move on this and get ready for a murder trial that will be happening in August. Right? Is it August? I don't want to misquote. I believe it's August. So, they only have so much time to get ready, and they do have a lot to do because there are quite a lot of witnesses, quite a lot of depositions that need to happen. And yeah, once this evidence is decided on, the defense can properly move forward, craft their defense, and the state can properly move forward with their case. So I hope this was at least a little bit informative about how, when you have a not great defense and overwhelming amount of evidence, how trials really do go. Because I do feel like I've been kind of just screaming it into the universe over here that it's like, this trial is not going to go well, for Team Trevizo. I know it's my opinion, but man, this evidence is not great, and you're going into a losing battle. Maybe the strategy should change. I've been saying that since the get-go, but maybe they will wise up over this next bit of time and maybe attempt to negotiate with the state, because if they are watching any other trials, they should see the outcomes that are happening, and maybe, at least in my opinion, be a little freaked out to go to trial themselves, more than you would be anyways. You know what I mean? It's just like, what are you guys gonna say? How are you gonna spin this? I do not see it happening. The only way I've seen Gary Mitchell operate to try and get people out of trouble is to do emotional pleas. Emotional pleas. She's a young girl. You're gonna take away her life. She didn't mean to. She's not a danger to other people. She really didn't know, whatever. He did that in a death penalty case, and he argued all kinds of emotional crap for this guy who murdered, took part in the murder of a elderly couple after they escaped from prison in Texas. They cross state lines and go to New Mexico and kill an elderly couple on a road trip vacation to Colorado, and they murder them and take their car. And so, yeah, Gary defended that guy, and he was found guilty. But then Gary tried to, for his sentencing, get him out of the death penalty, which he did. But that guy is serving life in prison. So again, not effective, but he did use a bunch of emotional pleas to be like, please, this guy has been hurt and assaulted in jail and he's had a bad life and yada yada. Whatever. You're a cold-blooded murderer. Personally, this may offend other people. I'm not a fan of the death penalty. I don't really believe that it solves anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, weak, but I think it's cruel and inhumane, and I don't enjoy the idea of doing something to someone that they did to someone else just to prove a point. I don't really think that's, I don't know. I don't know about death as a punishment. It's always been a thing for me. I'm very weird about that. But this guy does deserve life in prison. And to hear Gary Mitchell try and use emotional pleas is very silly to me, because I'm sure those people were pleading for their life as well. And these people who murder viciously don't care. Again, I know it might upset people. I try not to make political statements, but when talking about a death penalty thing, I'm like, well, I guess I should at least tell my thoughts. I really am not a fan of the death penalty. Maybe for harm to a child. Worse than, I know it might sound silly, but worse than murder of adult is harming a child to me, because you might have took someone's life, but if you harm a child, they live with that forever. And a lot of children who are assaulted, a lot of them recover and have great lives, but a lot of them are, they struggle for the rest of their life. So I don't know. I feel like that's just my opinions. That's how I feel on stuff. But Gary Mitchell has argued against death penalty in cases, which I agree with, but I don't agree with his argument style. But anyways, not to make it weird or anything about the death penalty, but he did argue that, and he made it very emotional. And my own opinions on death penalty aside, the man was spared, which, yeah, good, I guess. Even though he's a vicious murderer, I'm not a huge fan of the death penalty. Possibly, unless children are involved, then I might be. I don't know. But Gary argues emotions. He doesn't argue facts. And in Alexee's case, he doesn't have facts. So he's probably going to argue emotions again. And essentially, we probably should be ready for that, because hopefully the jury is not people whose heartstrings are going to be pulled and feel bad enough to not convict, because the overwhelming amount of evidence is indeed there. So With that being said, thank you so much if you made it this far in this video. Like I said before, I hope it was informative on, just what happens when you go to trial with unbelievable defenses, in my opinion. And again, it's my opinion, but I think we can compare Alexee to Hannah Payne and Charlie Adelson's trial when it comes to the overwhelming amount of evidence and the type of defense you'll have to craft against it. So, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I do genuinely enjoy the conversation. If you're interested in following cases like the Alexee Trevizo case to trial, please subscribe as I'll be covering it all along the way with a legal focus. It's your Friday. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.